The sun beat down mercilessly on Cedar Springs' cracked sidewalks as 8-year-old Lily Anderson clutched her backpack straps, taking the shortcut home through Willow Lane. The familiar rumble came first. 3 motorcycles, chrome gleaming, blocking the narrow path ahead. The largest rider, a bearded man with arms covered in faded tattoos, dismounted and staggered toward her. "Hey there, little lady. You lost," his words slurred as his friends laughed. Lily froze, her throat tight with fear. A blur of tan and black fur exploded from between 2 buildings. Ranger, her German shepherd, transformed before her eyes, no longer the gentle companion who slept at the foot of her bed, but a snarling guardian with raised hackles and bared teeth. The biker stumbled back as Ranger positioned himself between them, his bark echoing down the empty street. When the man lunged forward, Ranger leapt, powerful jaws clamping onto denim, sending the man crashing to the pavement. Police sirens wailed in the distance as Ranger stood his ground, unwavering in his protection. But what happened next would change everything for Lily and the dog who saved her life. Leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments along with the city you're watching from now. Let's continue with the story. Cedar Springs hadn't always been the kind of place where a child needed protection on her walk home from school. Once a thriving suburb outside Dallas, the town had slowly declined as factories closed and businesses moved away. Now, weathered for sale signs dotted the landscape like persistent weeds, and the community struggled with rising crime and dwindling resources. Lily Anderson lived with her mother Sarah in the Oak Ridge Apartments, a tired 2-story complex with peeling paint and window air conditioning units that fought valiantly against the Texas heat. At 8 years old, Lily carried more weight on her small shoulders than most children, twice her age. 2 years earlier, her father Thomas, an Army veteran with a booming laugh and gentle hands, had died in a highway collision with a drunk driver. The accident left Sarah a widow at 32 and Lily with nightmares that still woke her some nights. Sarah Anderson worked double shifts as an ER nurse at Cedar Springs Medical Center, her scrubs always neatly pressed despite the exhaustion etched into the lines around her eyes. The long hours paid the bills, but left Lily alone more often than either of them wanted. Sarah kept their small apartment spotless, and the refrigerator stocked, her love evident in carefully packed lunches and notes hidden in Lily's textbooks. Lily herself was a quiet child with her father's hazel eyes and her mother's determination. She excelled in art class but struggled to make friends, preferring the company of her sketchbook and colored pencils. Her drawings, mostly animals and elaborate fantasy creatures, covered the walls of their apartment, bright spots of imagination against beige walls. Ranger had entered their lives 6 months earlier, when Lily discovered him hiding behind the apartment dumpster, ribs protruding through his dirty coat, a gash along his side still crusted with blood. Despite Sarah's initial protests about expenses and responsibilities, Lily's tearful pleading had won out. The veterinarian estimated the German shepherd was about 4 years old and had clearly endured significant abuse. What nobody knew then was Ranger's history, the mysterious scars beneath his fur, why he startled at certain sounds, or how he could transition from gentle companion to fierce protector in an instant. The neighbors simply saw a loyal dog who never left Lily's side, who waited patiently at the window each afternoon, watching for her return from school. No one, least of all the Andersons, could have imagined the storm that was about to engulf them all because of this mysterious shepherd with the soulful brown eyes. Every weekday afternoon followed the same ritual. Sarah would call during her break between shifts, reminding Lily to lock the apartment door and start her homework. Lily would dutifully agree, hanging up only after telling her mother she loved her. Then she would race to the window where Ranger always waited, his tail thumping against the wall as soon as he spotted her approaching the complex. Today had started like any other Tuesday. Lily had navigated the crowded hallways of Cedar Springs Elementary, dodging the usual taunts from Bethany Williams about her second-hand clothes and too quiet voice. Her art teacher, Mrs. Grayson, had praised her drawing of Ranger, suggesting she enter it in the county fair competition. The small victory had carried Lily through the rest of the day, the carefully rolled artwork now tucked safely in her backpack. "Mom's working late again," Lily told Ranger as she scratched behind his ears that morning. "But we'll be okay, won't we, boy?" Ranger had responded by pressing his nose against her cheek, his warm breath a comfort she had come to rely on since finding him behind their apartment building 6 months earlier. The memory of that day remained vivid in Lily's mind. She had been taking out the trash, a chore she'd recently inherited as part of becoming more responsible, when she heard the whimper. Following the sound, she discovered what looked more like a shadow than a dog, cowering behind the dumpster. His fur was matted with dirt and blood, one ear partially torn, ribs showing through his once magnificent coat. "It's okay," she had whispered, kneeling despite the smell and filth. "I won't hurt you." The dog had regarded her with eyes that seemed to understand everything: pain, fear, abandonment, all emotions Lily knew too well since losing her father. Convincing her mother had been the hard part. "Honey, we can barely afford our own food," Sarah had explained, her voice gentle but firm. "And we don't know anything about this dog. He could be dangerous." "He's not dangerous, Mom. He's hurt. Like us." Those 5 words had crumbled Sarah's resistance. The next day, they'd taken the trembling shepherd to Dr. Martinez, the kindest veterinarian in Cedar Springs, who'd treated his wounds at a discount after hearing their story. "This dog has been through a war," Dr. Martinez had said, running her hand along scars hidden beneath his fur. "He's severely malnourished, and these marks, someone was not kind to him." But Ranger, as Lily named him, had proven himself a gentle soul within their home. He slept beside Lily's bed each night, his presence keeping the nightmares at bay better than any night light. He learned the rules quickly: no jumping on furniture, no begging at the table, no barking after 9 p.m. when Mrs. Decker next door was trying to sleep. What no one realized then was how carefully Ranger watched over Lily, how he positioned himself between her and strangers on their walks, how his ears pricked forward at unusual sounds near their apartment, how his eyes tracked movement through windows and doorways with military precision. Until today, Lily had taken the shortcut down Willow Lane, eager to show her mother the praise Mrs. Grayson had written on her drawing. The narrow street ran behind Mackenzie's auto shop and usually shaved 10 minutes off her walk home. The rumble of motorcycles wasn't unusual in Cedar Springs, but the way they slowed as they approached her sent the first prickle of unease down Lily's spine. 3 bikes, customized Harleys with gleaming chrome and leather saddlebags, pulled to the curb ahead, effectively blocking her path. The largest rider dismounted first, removing his helmet to reveal a bearded face with bloodshot eyes. A faded tattoo of a rattlesnake curled up his neck, its fanged mouth open near his ear. "Well, what do we have here?" he called, his words slightly slurred. The patch on his leather vest read Rattler, with Iron Horses MC curved beneath it. Lily clutched her backpack straps tighter, taking a step backward. "I'm just going home." "Hear that, boys? She's just going home." His companions laughed, one taking a swig from a metal flask before passing it to Rattler. "Maybe we should make sure you get there safe, sweetheart. Dangerous neighborhood and all." Fear closed Lily's throat as the man took another step toward her, the smell of whiskey and cigarettes preceding him. Her legs felt frozen to the spot, her heart hammering against her ribs. Then came the sound, a low, rumbling growl that seemed to vibrate through the pavement beneath her feet. Ranger appeared as if conjured from her fear, his body no longer the friendly companion but a taut weapon. Hackles raised along his spine, teeth bared in a snarl that transformed his face into something ancient and terrifying. Officer Mike Reynolds had been patrolling Cedar Springs for just under 3 months, but he already knew the trouble spots. Willow Lane, with its poor lighting and proximity to the rusty nail bar, was high on his list, especially during the afternoon when school let out. 20 years in the Army, including 12 as a military K-9 handler, had taught him to trust his instincts. Today, those instincts had him turning down the narrow street just as he heard the distinctive sound of a dog's warning bark, not the frantic yapping of an excitable pet, but the measured, authoritative bark of a working dog. What he saw as he rounded the corner confirmed his suspicions: a child cornered by 3 men, and a German shepherd positioned protectively in front of her. Reynolds recognized the tactical stance immediately. The dog wasn't panicking, but controlling the situation with practiced precision. Reynolds flipped on his lights, calling for backup as he exited his patrol car. "Police, everyone stay where you are." The largest biker, clearly intoxicated, gestured angrily toward the dog. "That beast attacked me, came out of nowhere and knocked me down." Reynolds noted the torn denim at the man's ankle, but also the strategic positioning of the dog. It hadn't gone for the throat or face as a truly aggressive animal might. Instead, it had executed what looked remarkably like a controlled takedown, the kind Reynolds had seen hundreds of times in military training exercises. "Is this your dog?" Reynolds asked the girl, who looked no older than 8 or 9, her face pale with fear. "Yes, sir. This is Ranger. He was just protecting me." Her voice was small but steady. "He's a menace," the biker shouted, taking a step forward. The dog responded with a warning growl, but didn't advance another telltale sign of training. Reynolds raised his hand, gesturing for the man to stop. "Sir, I'm going to need you to step back and produce some identification." And Reynolds turned to the girl. "What's your name?" "Sweetheart, Lily Anderson. I live in Oak Ridge Apartments with my mom. She's at work, and these men were bothering you." Before Lily could answer, the lead biker interrupted. "We were just talking to her. Then this mutt comes charging at us." Reynolds detected the slur in the man's speech, noted the flask protruding from his vest pocket. "Sir, have you been drinking today?" As Reynolds processed the scene, he noticed something odd. The dog ranger kept glancing at the lead biker with unusual intensity, almost as if he recognized him, and the man, despite his bluster, seemed equally fixated on the dog. Officer Teresa Wilson arrived as backup, helping Reynolds separate the bikers and administer field sobriety tests. All 3 failed miserably. As Wilson began processing their IDs, Reynolds knelt to Lily's level. "You doing okay?" Did they hurt you? Lily shook her head. No. Ranger came before they could. Before anything happened? Reynolds looked at the German shepherd, now sitting calmly beside Lily, though his attention remained fixed on the bikers. He's very protective of you. He found me, Lily said simply. 6 months ago. He was hurt and hiding behind our dumpster. Reynolds reached out slowly, allowing the dog to sniff his hand before carefully examining the worn collar around his neck. No tags, no identification of any kind. Does he have a license? Vaccinations? Lily's face fell. Mom says we'll get them when we save up enough. The vet bills were really expensive when we first found him. Reynolds sighed, already foreseeing the complications. In Cedar Springs, like most municipalities, unlicensed dogs involved in incidents regardless of the circumstances triggered mandatory reporting to animal control. Officer Wilson approached with the biker's identification. Mike, you're going to want to see this. Lead guy's Jake Thompson, goes by Rattler. He's got priors for assault, and there's an outstanding warrant in Tarrant County. As Wilson spoke, Thompson's bloodshot eyes locked onto the dog again. That ain't no regular mutt, he muttered, loud enough for Reynolds to hear. That's a trained attack dog. Dangerous animal like that shouldn't be around kids. Reynolds noted how Ranger's ears flattened at the sound of Thompson's voice, not in fear, but in what looked almost like recognition. Before Reynolds could question this further, a county animal control vehicle pulled up, Sergeant James Davis emerging with clipboard in hand. At 50, Davis was a 25-year veteran of animal control, known throughout the county for his strict adherence to regulations. Got a call about a dog attack. Davis surveyed the scene, his expression hardening when he spotted Ranger. It's more complicated than that, Reynolds began, explaining the situation while Wilson continued processing the bikers for public intoxication and the outstanding warrant. Davis listened impassively, jotting notes on his clipboard. Unlicensed dog involved in an incident with a human. Regardless of provocation, that's mandatory remand to the shelter for evaluation. But Ranger was protecting me, Lily protested, her small hand clutching the dog's fur. I understand that, young lady, but rules are rules. We need to make sure he doesn't pose a danger to the community. Davis's voice softened slightly. Is your mother available? She's working at the hospital. She's a nurse, Lily explained, tears welling in her eyes. Reynolds called Sarah Anderson while Davis prepared the necessary paperwork. When Sarah arrived 20 minutes later, still in her scrubs, her face was a mask of controlled panic. What's happening, Lily? Are you okay? She knelt, checking her daughter for injuries. Mom, they want to take Ranger away. He saved me from those men, and now they're saying he's dangerous. Sarah turned to Reynolds, who explained the situation as gently as possible. The bikers have been arrested, but unfortunately, because Ranger is unlicensed and was involved in an incident where he made physical contact with a person, he was protecting my daughter. Sarah's voice rose with emotion. Davis stepped forward. Mrs. Anderson, I understand this is upsetting, but the law is clear. Any unlicensed dog involved in a biting incident must be quarantined and evaluated. He'll be held at the county shelter for a minimum of 10 days for rabies observation, and then there will be a determination about whether he can be released back to you. And if they determine he's dangerous? Sarah asked, the color draining from her face. Davis hesitated. Davis, then euthanasia would be the standard protocol. Lily's wail cut through the air as she threw her arms around Ranger's neck. "No. You can't kill him. He's good. He's the best dog ever." Reynolds watched as Davis, despite his rigid stance, seemed to flinch at the child's distress. "Nobody's saying that's going to happen," Davis said, his tone softer. "But we have procedures that must be followed." As Davis prepared to load Ranger into the animal control vehicle, Reynolds noticed Thompson, now handcuffed in the back of Wilson's patrol car, leaning forward with unusual interest. Just before Davis closed the door on Ranger, Thompson called out something too low for Reynolds to hear clearly. But the effect on the dog was immediate. Ranger's head snapped up, his ears perked forward, and he let out a small whine that sounded nothing like his previous confident barks. Reynolds frowned, making a mental note to look more closely at Thompson's record. Something about this situation felt wrong. A puzzle with missing pieces. As the animal control van pulled away, with Lily sobbing in her mother's arms, Reynolds made a silent promise to the distraught child he would get to the bottom of this mystery. The Cedar Springs County Animal Shelter sat on the outskirts of town, a low-slung concrete building with chain-link runs extending from its back wall. Originally built in the 1970s, the facility had received few updates over the decades, and it showed in the cracked linoleum floors and flickering fluorescent lights. For Ranger, accustomed to the small but warm apartment with Lily, the shelter was a sensory assault, the overlapping barks of anxious dogs, the sharp smell of disinfectant barely masking more organic odors, and the constant, echoing footsteps of staff moving through metal-doored corridors. Sergeant Davis had processed the German Shepherd efficiently, photographing him, scanning for a non-existent microchip, and conducting a basic health assessment before assigning him to a run in the quarantine section. The standard protocols felt hollow to Davis as he watched the dog sit with perfect posture in the center of the concrete floor, neither cowering nor pacing like most impounded animals. Something about this dog wasn't adding up, but Davis had built his career on following procedures to the letter. 10 days minimum, he told the shelter attendant, initialing the intake form. Bite quarantine, then behavioral assessment, and make a note this one's going to have some interested parties. Back at Oak Ridge Apartments, Sarah Anderson sat at their small kitchen table, a cold cup of coffee untouched before her as she tried to make sense of the packet of forms Officer Reynolds had left. Legal terminology swam before her exhausted eyes, potentially dangerous dog hearing, evidence of provocation, burden of proof. After 16 hours on her feet in the ER, the last thing she'd expected was to find her daughter in a police incident and their dog impounded. Mom. Lily stood in the doorway of her bedroom, eyes red-rimmed from crying. "Is Ranger going to die?" Sarah forced a reassuring smile. "No, honey. We're going to fight for him. He was protecting you, and we'll make sure everyone knows that." "But what if they don't believe us? That man was lying about what happened?" Sarah pushed back her chair and opened her arms. Lily rushed into them, burying her face against her mother's shoulder. "Then we'll get proof. Officer Reynolds seemed to understand. He's going to help us." The truth, which Sarah kept to herself, was far less certain. The forms before her outlined a legal process that favored caution over compassion, public safety over individual circumstances. Without proper licensing and vaccination records, Ranger was already at a disadvantage. Add in the bite incident, regardless of justification, and the path to bringing him home looked increasingly narrow. Sarah's nursing salary barely covered their rent and utilities, with precious little left over for emergencies. The thought of hiring a lawyer seemed impossible, yet the alternative, losing Ranger, was unthinkable. She'd witnessed firsthand how the dog had helped heal Lily's heart after Thomas's death. The nightmares that had plagued her daughter for months after the accident had subsided once Ranger began sleeping at the foot of her bed. "Can I see him tomorrow?" Lily asked, her voice small. "I'll call the shelter first thing in the morning," Sarah promised. "Now try to get some sleep." "Okay. Things will look better tomorrow." But morning brought no improvement. Lily picked at her breakfast, then refused to go to school, clutching Ranger's worn blue leash like a talisman. Sarah, already scheduled for another double shift, called in to request emergency family leave, only to be reminded that she'd exhausted her paid time off after Thomas's funeral. The choice was stark: go to work or risk their financial stability. "Mrs. Harmon next door will check on you after school," Sarah told Lily, hating herself for leaving. "I'll come straight home at 8, and tomorrow we'll visit Ranger together." "He's scared without us," Lily whispered. "He doesn't understand why we left him." The words followed Sarah throughout her shift, echoing as she administered medications and changed dressings. By the time she clocked out, bone-weary and heartsick, a new worry had taken root. The shelter's visiting hours would be over, and another day would pass with Ranger alone, perhaps believing they'd abandoned him. What Sarah didn't know was that Ranger had already received a visitor that afternoon. Officer Mike Reynolds had spent his lunch break at the county records office, then driven directly to the shelter. His conversation with Sergeant Davis was brief but pointed. "I pulled Thompson's complete record," Reynolds said, spreading several printouts on Davis's cluttered desk. 3 arrests for dogfighting in Tarrant County over the last decade. Never did serious time witnesses would recant. Evidence would disappear. Davis frowned. "You think this dog has some connection to dogfighting?" Reynolds shook his head. "Not as a fighter. This dog has military or police training. I'd stake my career on it. The way he positioned himself, the controlled takedown, the bite and hold technique that's not something you see in street dogs or even most pets." "Even if that's true, it doesn't change protocol," Davis replied, though his certainty seemed less absolute than the day before. "If anything, a dog with attack training loose in the community is more concerning." "I'd like to see him," Reynolds persisted. "There are ways to test for specific training markers." Davis hesitated, then nodded. 15 minutes, supervised." The moment Reynolds entered the quarantine area, Ranger's demeanor changed. The shepherd, who had been lying with his head on his paws, sat up at attention, his eyes focused and alert. Reynolds recognized the posture immediately. It was the same alert readiness he'd seen countless times in military working dogs. "Hey, buddy," Reynolds said softly, approaching the chain-link gate. "Remember me from yesterday?" Ranger's tail gave a single sweep across the concrete floor. Acknowledgement, not excitement. Reynolds glanced at Davis, then back at the dog. "Sitz," he commanded in German. Ranger immediately sat in perfect form. "Platz." The dog dropped into a down position, still alert. "Bleib." Ranger remained perfectly still as Reynolds opened the gate and entered the run, a move that made Davis tense visibly. "I wouldn't," Davis began. "It's okay," Reynolds assured him. "He's not aggressive. He's trained. He turned back to Ranger and gave another command, "Fuss." The shepherd rose and positioned himself at Reynolds's left side, exactly as a service dog would. "This is a military working dog," Reynolds said with certainty. Or he was. The commands, the positioning, the alert focus. This isn't just any German shepherd. He knelt beside Ranger, carefully examining the healed scars visible beneath his fur. "These aren't fighting wounds. This one here." He pointed to a long scar along Ranger's side. "That's consistent with a knife wound or shrapnel." Davis's skepticism was fading. "If you're right, he should be in a database somewhere. All military dogs are microchipped and tattooed." "Usually in the ear," Reynolds agreed, gently checking both of Ranger's ears. "Nothing here, but wait." He carefully examined the inside of the dog's upper lip, where a faded blue tattoo was barely visible. "There's something, but it's been deliberately obscured. Someone tried to remove his identification." The implications hung in the air between them. Military working dogs were valuable trained ones worth tens of thousands of dollars. They were also supposed to be carefully tracked, with strict protocols for retirement and adoption. "This changes things," Davis admitted. "If he's a stolen military asset, then this goes beyond a simple dog bite case." Reynolds finished. "I need to check some databases, make some calls. Can you hold off on the behavioral assessment until I get some answers?" Davis nodded slowly. "I can give you 48 hours before I have to proceed with the standard evaluation. After that, my hands are tied by county regulations." "I'll take it," Reynolds said, giving Ranger a final pat before exiting the run. As he reached the door, he turned back. "One more thing. How's the girl Lily?" "Haven't seen her," Davis replied. "Mother called this morning, but shelter policy prohibits visitation during rabies quarantine." Reynolds frowned. That dog saved that child from God knows what. Might be worth bending policy this once. As Reynolds left the shelter, his phone buzzed with a text from Officer Wilson. "Thompson made bail. Something weird cousin picked him up. Paid cash. Guy's name is Marcus Delgado. Flagged in system for arms dealing. 2019. Across town, the subject of that text was already causing problems. Jake Rattler Thompson, newly released and seething with anger, slammed his beer bottle on the scarred wooden table of his cousin's garage. "I'm telling you, Mark, that's the same damn dog, the one that disappeared from your place last year." Marcus Delgado, a lean man with calculating eyes, shook his head. "Can't be. That dog was half dead when we lost him. Besides, military dogs cost a fortune on the black market. What would it be doing with some kid in Cedar Springs?" "I know what I saw," Thompson insisted. "Same markings, same training. That mutt recognized me, too. You should have seen the way it looked at me." Delgado's expression hardened. "If it is the same dog, we've got a problem. That animal saw everything at the compound. If somebody connects it back to us..." "Exactly." Thompson drained his beer. "So, what's the plan?" "First, we confirm it's the same dog. Then we make sure it never testifies, so to speak." Delgado reached for his phone. "I've still got a contact at the shelter. Let's find out where they're keeping our little problem." Meanwhile, Sarah Anderson's research had led her to Cedar Springs Legal Aid, a cramped office above the town's only laundromat. Eleanor Simmons, a semi-retired attorney with wire-rimmed glasses and no-nonsense gray hair, reviewed Sarah's paperwork with pursed lips. "It's an uphill battle," she said finally. "Without proper licensing and vaccination records, and with a bite incident on file. The burden of proof is on you to show the dog isn't dangerous." "But he was protecting my daughter," Sarah insisted. "Those men were drunk, threatening a child." "What was Ranger supposed to do?" Eleanor's expression softened slightly. "I understand, but the law doesn't always account for context. We need evidence beyond your daughter's word against grown men." "One of them had a record," Sarah added. "Officer Reynolds said he had priors for assault." "That helps." Eleanor made a note. "Any witnesses besides your daughter and the bikers?" Sarah's heart sank. "No. It was just Lily walking home from school." "What about security cameras? That area near Mackenzie's might have something." Hope flickered briefly. "I don't know. I could ask Officer Reynolds." "Do that," Eleanor advised. "And bring me everything you have on the dog vet records, photos, anything showing his temperament. We'll file for an emergency hearing. But I want to be honest with you, these cases often don't go in favor of the animal, especially with unlicensed dogs." The legal consultation depleted the small emergency fund Sarah had been building, leaving her with the cold realization that a proper legal defense would cost thousands she didn't have. As she left the office, her phone rang Lily's school. "Mrs. Anderson, this is Principal Warner. I'm afraid Lily isn't in class today." Sarah's stomach dropped. "What?" "She should be. Mrs. Harmon walked her to the bus stop this morning. She never arrived. We've checked all classrooms and the playground. Given yesterday's incident, we thought it best to call you immediately." Terror gripped Sarah's heart as she raced to her car. Where would Lily go? The answer came to her immediately. The shelter. Her daughter, determined and heartbroken, would try to find Ranger across town. Lily Anderson stood outside the chain-link fence of the county animal shelter, her backpack still on her shoulders. She had waited until Mrs. Harmon returned to her apartment, then taken the bus in the opposite direction from school, transferring twice based on instructions she'd carefully memorized from Google Maps the night before. Now, hearing the distant barking of dogs, she struggled to find a way inside. The main entrance had a receptionist who had already turned her away once, explaining that children couldn't visit without an adult. The back of the building, where outdoor runs lined up behind another fence, seemed more promising. Lily squeezed through a gap where the fence met a dumpster, her small frame easily fitting through the space. Once inside the perimeter, she crept along the row of outdoor runs, searching for Ranger among the barking, jumping dogs. When she reached the end without finding him, tears of frustration welled in her eyes. "He must be inside," she whispered to herself, turning toward the building. Before she could move further, a door opened and Sergeant Davis emerged, clipboard in hand. Lily froze, certain she was about to be caught and sent home. Instead, Davis seemed preoccupied, muttering to himself as he checked something on the runs. When he turned and spotted her, his stern expression faltered. "How did you get back here?" he demanded, though his voice lacked its usual authority. "Please," Lily said, tears spilling down her cheeks. "I just want to see Ranger. He's probably scared without me." Davis sighed heavily, looking from the child to the building and back again. You're not supposed to be here. There are rules. But he's my dog, Lily insisted. He saved me. He's a hero, not a bad dog. Something in Davis's weathered face softened. Come with me, he said finally. 5 minutes, that's all. And if anyone asks, this never happened. Inside, Davis led Lily through the sterile corridor to the quarantine section. He's been different from most dogs we get, Davis admitted as they walked. Calmer, more dignified, I guess you'd say. When they reached Ranger's Run, the shepherd was lying on the concrete floor, head on paws. The moment he saw Lily, he sprang to his feet, tail wagging furiously as he pressed against the chain link. "Ranger!" Lily cried, dropping to her knees by the gate. "I'm here, boy. I didn't forget you." Davis hesitated, then unlocked the gate. 5 minutes, he reminded her, and you stay right by the door where I can see you. Lily barely heard him as she threw her arms around Ranger's neck, burying her face in his fur. The shepherd whined softly, licking her tear-stained cheeks, his entire body wiggling with joy. "Mom and I are trying to bring you home," Lily whispered to him. "Officer Reynolds is helping too. You just have to be brave a little longer." Davis watched the reunion with conflicted emotions. 25 years enforcing animal control regulations had taught him to prioritize public safety over sentiment. Yet something about this case nagged at him the dog's unusual training, Reynolds's suspicions about its origins, and now the obvious bond between animal and child. His thoughts were interrupted by a commotion at the front desk. Peering through the window in the corridor door, he saw Sarah Anderson engaged in a heated discussion with the receptionist. "That's your mother," he told Lily, "and she looks about ready to tear this place apart looking for you." Lily's face fell. "Am I in trouble?" "Let's just say you're about to learn why you shouldn't skip school and trespass at county facilities." Davis replied, though without real anger. "Come on. Time to face the music." The reunion between mother and daughter was a storm of relief, fear, and admonishment. Sarah alternated between crushing Lily in desperate hugs and lecturing her about the dangers of disappearing. Through it all, Davis stood awkwardly by, his usual by-the-book demeanor softened by the emotional scene. "I couldn't let him think we abandoned him," Lily explained, tears streaming down her face. "He already lost one family. He can't lose us too." The words struck Davis with unexpected force. Lost one family. How much did this child know about the dog's mysterious past? "Mrs. Anderson," he interrupted. "Could I speak with you privately for a moment?" In the small conference room down the hall, Davis closed the door and faced Sarah. "Officer Reynolds believes your dog may have a military background, possibly a trained K-9 that was misappropriated." Sarah's eyes widened. "Military ranger." "The training markers are there," Davis confirmed. "And there's a partial tattoo that appears to have been tampered with. If Reynolds is right, this goes beyond a simple bite case. It could involve theft of government property, illegal trafficking. How does this affect our chances of getting him back?" Davis sighed. "Honestly, it complicates things. If he is a military asset, the government might have a claim. On the other hand, it supports your position that he was acting on training, not aggression." He paused. "There's a town council meeting tonight. The incident has already sparked debate about dangerous dogs in the community. It might help if you shared your perspective. Sarah glanced at her watch. I'm supposed to be at work in an hour. Call in, Davis suggested, surprising himself with the advice. This may be your best chance to shape the narrative before the formal hearing. As Sarah and Lily left the shelter, Davis returned to his office, troubled by the growing complexity of what should have been a routine case. His desk phone rang, interrupting his thoughts. Animal Control? Davis speaking? James. It's Marcus Delgado. Remember me, I helped with that coyote problem out at my property last year. Davis frowned, recalling the man vaguely. What can I do for you, Mr. Delgado? Heard you picked up a German shepherd yesterday. Biting incident with my cousin Jake Thompson. Davis's instincts, honed by decades in law enforcement, immediately flared. That's correct. The dog is in quarantine pending evaluation. Thing is, I think that might be my dog. Went missing about 6 months ago. German shepherd, tan and black, about 4 years old. Lots of German shepherds fit that description, Davis replied carefully. Do you have documentation, registration papers? Microchip number? Well, no. He was more of a working dog on my property. But I'd know him if I saw him. I see. Davis's suspicion deepened. Well, Mr. Delgado, the shelter is closed to the public today for maintenance, but you're welcome to come by tomorrow with any proof of ownership you might have. After hanging up, Davis immediately called Reynolds, who confirmed what Davis already suspected. Marcus Delgado's coyote problem likely had more to do with creating a cover for his less legitimate business ventures. Keep the dog secure, Reynolds warned. If Delgado is involved in what I think he is, and if Ranger can somehow connect him to it, that dog might be in danger. As dusk fell over Cedar Springs, 3 separate forces prepared for a confrontation that would determine Ranger's fate. Sarah and Lily heading to the town council meeting with Lily's drawings and letters pleading for Ranger's return. Reynolds delving into military databases, searching for matches to the partial tattoo. And in a garage across town, Marcus Delgado loading a tranquilizer gun as Thompson waited behind the wheel of an idling pickup truck. The clock was ticking, and Ranger, lying alert in his concrete run, somehow seemed to sense the gathering storm. Cedar Springs Town Hall stood as one of the few well-maintained buildings in the struggling community, its red brick facade and white columns a reminder of more prosperous times. Tonight, the council chambers overflowed with residents, the scheduled discussion about dangerous dogs having spread through social media and neighborhood gossip until it became the most anticipated meeting in months. Sarah Anderson sat in the 3rd row, Lily beside her clutching a folder containing her drawings of Ranger and letters from classmates attesting to the dog's gentle nature. Sarah had called the hospital, explained the emergency, and, to her relief, her supervisor had granted her the night off, though with a warning about her increasingly precarious attendance record. There are so many people, Lily whispered, intimidated by the crowd. They all have opinions about dogs in the community. Sarah explained, trying to keep her voice confident. But we have the truth about Ranger. That's what matters. Across the aisle, Sarah noticed a group of men wearing matching T-shirts with the slogan, "Protect our kids, support the dangerous dog ordinance." Their leader, a heavy-set man with a neatly trimmed beard, caught her eye and nodded curtly. The battle lines were clearly drawn. At the Cedar Springs County Animal Shelter, Officer Mike Reynolds hunched over his laptop in Davis's cramped office, a paper cup of vending machine coffee growing cold beside him. For the past 2 hours, he'd been cross-referencing the partial tattoo from Ranger's lip with military working dog databases, calling in favors from former Army contacts. "It's definitely military," Reynolds told Davis, who stood watching over his shoulder. "The first 2 digits match the format for dogs trained at Lackland Air Force Base, but without the complete number." "What about the physical characteristics? Any way to narrow it down that way?" Reynolds nodded, clicking through to another database. "I'm checking dogs reported missing or stolen in the last 2 years. German Shepherds with similar markings." Davis's desk phone rang, interrupting their search. The night attendant's voice came through, tense and hurried. "Sergeant Davis, there's someone at the front trying to claim that Quarantine Shepherd. Says he's the owner. Has registration papers and everything." Davis and Reynolds exchanged alarmed glances. "Stall him," Davis ordered. "Say you need to find the paperwork. I'll be right there." In the shelter's small lobby, Marcus Delgado leaned against the reception counter, his manner casual but his eyes alert and calculating. He straightened as Davis emerged from the back hallway. "Mr. Delgado?" Davis greeted him neutrally. "You have documentation for the dog." Delgado slid a folder across the counter. "Registration papers, vet records, photos. His name is Gunner. Been missing him something fierce." Davis examined the papers, immediately noting inconsistencies. The photos showed a German Shepherd that resembled Ranger, but several distinctive markings were different. The registration was dated 3 years back, yet the paper looked freshly printed. "These seem to be in order," Davis lied, stalling for time as Reynolds continued his database search in the back office. "But given the circumstances of impoundment, we can't release him immediately. There's a quarantine period, then a dangerous dog hearing." Delgado's friendly demeanor slipped momentarily. "Look, my cousin was drunk, acting stupid. I'm not pressing charges about the bite, just want my dog back." "I appreciate that, but there are procedures." "I know all about your procedures," Delgado cut in, his voice hardening. "And I know about the little girl who's been coming around, claiming my dog is hers. Possession isn't ownership. Sergeant." The implied threat toward Lily sent a chill down Davis's spine. "Where exactly did you say you lost your dog, Mr. Delgado?" "My property out near the county line, about 6 months ago." "Interesting timing," Davis remarked, stalling further. "The Anderson family found this dog as a stray around that time. Severely malnourished, wounded, signs of abuse." Delgado's expression darkened. "You calling me a liar?" Before Davis could respond, his radio crackled. "Davis, I need you back here. Now." Reynolds' voice carried an urgency that couldn't be ignored. "Excuse me a moment," Davis told Delgado. "My colleague is reviewing your paperwork." In the back office, Reynolds had pushed aside his laptop, spreading printed documents across Davis's desk. His face was flushed with excitement. "I found him," Reynolds announced, pointing to a military personnel file. "Sergeant First Class Michael Collins, K-9 handler, killed in action in Afghanistan 2 years ago. His dog was Sarge registration number, matches the partial tattoo on our shepherd." Davis scanned the file, absorbing the implications. "So Ranger is actually Sarge, military working dog, specialized in explosive detection and patrol. After Collins died, Sarge was supposed to be retired and adopted by Collins's family, but somewhere in the process, he disappeared. Military police report says he was stolen from the transport facility. Davis looked up sharply. And ended up with Delgado. Seems likely. Black market for trained military dogs is lucrative. A dog with Sarge's training could sell for upwards of $50,000 to the right buyer. Reynolds pointed to another document. Here's where it gets interesting. Collins's official next of kin was listed as his sister, Sarah Collins Anderson. The realization hit Davis like a physical blow. Sarah Anderson, Lily's mother? Reynolds nodded grimly. Sarge was supposed to go to them after Collins died. Instead, someone stole him, probably sold him to Delgado, who either used him for protection at his compound or was planning to resell him. And somehow the dog escaped, found his way to Cedar Springs, and to the family he was meant to be with all along. Reynolds finished. It's not coincidence. These dogs bond deeply with their handlers. Sarge would have recognized Sarah or Lily from visits, photos, even their scent on Collins' belongings. Davis felt a rare emotion breaking through his professional detachment, genuine awe at the dog's loyalty and determination. Delgado's in the lobby right now with forged papers, trying to claim him. Reynolds' expression hardened. Stall him. I need to make one more call to confirm all this. Then we can confront him. At the town hall meeting, Mayor Franklin Peterson called for order as the discussion about dangerous dogs grew heated. Sarah watched with mounting anxiety as neighbor after neighbor approached the microphone, expressing fears about aggressive breeds in the community. My child shouldn't have to feel afraid walking to school because someone wants to own a dangerous animal, one mother declared to applause. These dogs are weapons, plain and simple, added another resident. If you need a German Shepherd or a Rottweiler to feel safe, maybe you should move somewhere else. When the leader of the Protect Our Kids group took the microphone, his rhetoric escalated further. Just this week, we had a vicious dog attack right here in Cedar Springs. A German Shepherd with no license, no vaccinations, attacking an innocent civilian. If that doesn't prove we need stricter ordinances, what will it take? A child's death. Sarah could remain silent no longer. Despite her terror of public speaking, she rose and approached the microphone, Lily trailing behind her. My name is Sarah Anderson, she began, her voice initially shaking before finding strength. The German Shepherd you're referring to belongs to my family, and he wasn't attacking randomly. He was protecting my 8-year-old daughter from 3 intoxicated men who were threatening her on her walk home from school. A murmur ran through the crowd as Sarah continued, gaining confidence. Ranger has never shown aggression toward anyone who wasn't threatening us. He sleeps beside my daughter's bed. He sits patiently while neighborhood children pet him. He even lets our elderly neighbor's cat steal his food. But he bit someone, the Protect Our Kids leader interrupted. That's a fact. Yes, he did, Sarah acknowledged. He bit a man who was approaching my daughter with clear ill intent, a man who, by the way, was arrested at the scene for public intoxication and had an outstanding warrant. Ranger did exactly what any of you would do if you saw a child in danger. He protected her. As the audience's mood began to shift, Lily stepped forward. Though trembling with nervousness, she opened her folder and held up a detailed drawing of Ranger standing protectively beside her. This is Ranger, she said, her small voice carrying in the suddenly quiet room. He was hurt and scared when I found him, but he got better with love. He's not just a dog. He's my best friend. And he's a hero." The sincerity in the child's voice touched even the most hardened hearts in the room. Sarah placed a supportive hand on her daughter's shoulder as Lily continued. "My dad died 2 years ago. After that, I had bad dreams every night. But since Ranger came, the bad dreams stopped. He keeps me safe." Her voice broke slightly. "Please don't take him away from me. Please don't kill him. He's a good dog." The room fell silent as Lily's words hung in the air. Mayor Peterson cleared his throat, visibly moved. "Thank you, young lady. That was very brave of you." Just as the mood in the chamber seemed to be turning in Ranger's favor, the back doors burst open. Officer Reynolds strode in, followed closely by Sergeant Davis. The urgency in their manner immediately captured everyone's attention. "Mayor Peterson, council members," Reynolds announced. "I apologize for the interruption, but there's new information about this case that can't wait." Sarah turned, hope and fear warring within her as Reynolds approached the podium. He nodded to her briefly before addressing the council. "The dog in question, Ranger, as the Anderson family calls him, is not an ordinary pet. He is a highly trained military working dog designated Sarge, formerly assigned to Sergeant First Class Michael Collins. United States Army." A shocked murmur ran through the crowd as Reynolds continued, holding up official documents with military letterhead. "Sergeant Collins was killed in action 2 years ago. According to military protocol, his canine partner was to be retired and adopted by his next of kin, his sister, Sarah Collins Anderson, and her family." Sarah gasped, her hand flying to her mouth as the pieces suddenly connected. "Michael's dog. But they told us he was reassigned after the funeral." Reynolds nodded grimly. That was the official story. "The reality is that Sarge was stolen from the military transport facility before he could be delivered to you. His identification tattoo was partially obscured, and he disappeared into a black market that trades in trained military dogs." The revelation sent shockwaves through the chamber. Mayor Peterson leaned forward. "Officer Reynolds, are you saying this dog was stolen government property?" "Yes, sir. And there's more." Reynolds gestured to Davis, who stepped forward with his own documentation. "The individual who tried to claim ownership of the dog this evening presented falsified papers. We have reason to believe he acquired Sarge illegally and may be connected to a larger network trafficking in stolen military assets." The Protect Our Kids leader rose in objection. "This doesn't change the fact that the dog bit someone." Davis addressed this directly. "Actually, it does. Military working dogs are trained in specific protocols for threat neutralization. What witnesses described wasn't random aggression, it was a trained response to a perceived threat against a child. The dog performed exactly as he was trained to do, with remarkable restraint given the situation." As the council chambers erupted in discussion, Sarah felt Lily tugging at her sleeve. "Mom, does this mean Uncle Michael's dog found us all by himself?" Sarah knelt beside her daughter, tears welling in her eyes as the full weight of the revelation hit her. Her brother's loyal partner, the dog who had served beside him in war zones, had somehow made his way across countless miles to find the family he was meant to protect. The dog she'd reluctantly taken in 6 months ago, the dog who had healed her daughter's broken heart, had been meant to be theirs all along. "Yes, sweetheart," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "Uncle Michael sent him to watch over us." Reynolds approached them, speaking quietly as the council discussion continued in the background. "There's more you should know. We believe the man who tried to claim Ranger tonight, Marcus Delgado, may be involved in illegal activities, possibly including the incident that led to your brother's death." Sarah's blood ran cold. "What are you saying?" Military intelligence had been tracking a weapons smuggling operation connected to Delgado. Your brother's unit was deployed to investigate when the explosion occurred. Nothing was ever proven, but... "And now his dog has led you back to the same man," Sarah finished, the implications staggering. Reynolds nodded. "Sarge Ranger may be the key witness in reopening the case, but first, we need to secure him. Delgado left the shelter when we confronted him about the forged papers, and we have reason to believe he won't give up easily." As if to confirm his warning, Davis's radio crackled with an urgent transmission. "All units, security alarm triggered at County Animal Shelter. Possible break-in in progress." Reynolds and Davis exchanged alarmed glances before Reynolds addressed Sarah directly. "Mrs. Anderson, stay here with Lily where it's safe. We have reason to believe Delgado may try to eliminate the dog to protect himself." As the officers rushed from the building, Sarah found herself facing an impossible choice: remain safely at the town hall with Lily, or follow the officers to the shelter where her brother's loyal partner now faced yet another threat. The dog who had journeyed so far to find them, who had protected Lily when Sarah couldn't, was once again in danger. In that moment, Sarah Anderson made her decision. Grabbing Lily's hand, she led her daughter quickly toward the exit. "Mom, where are we going?" Lily asked, struggling to keep up. "To help Ranger," Sarah replied, her voice steady with newfound determination. "He found us when we needed him most. Now it's our turn to find him." Night had fallen over Cedar Springs, the animal shelter's exterior illuminated only by sparse security lights that cast long shadows across the parking lot. The building's alarm blared into the darkness, its electronic wail echoing across the empty fields surrounding the facility. 2 patrol cars had already arrived, their red and blue lights painting the scene in alternating colors as officers established a perimeter around the building. Inside her neighbor's borrowed car, Sarah gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles whitened. She had dropped Lily off with Mrs. Harmon, ignoring her daughter's tearful protests. This confrontation was too dangerous, too unpredictable for a child, no matter how devoted she was to Ranger. "Stay with Mrs. Harmon," Sarah had instructed firmly. "I promise I'll bring Ranger home. But I need to know you're safe." Now, parking a discreet distance from the shelter, Sarah watched as Reynolds and Davis conferred with the responding officers. Their tense body language told her everything she needed to know. Delgado was inside, and so was Ranger. The night attendant had managed to escape when the break-in occurred, reporting that 2 armed men had forced their way into the quarantine section. Reynolds had attempted to call Sarah to warn her to stay away, but she had already left the town hall by then, driven by an instinct that felt older than conscious thought: the need to protect family. Even the 4-legged members. "What am I doing here?" Sarah whispered to herself, momentarily overcome by the absurdity of her position. She was a nurse, not a police officer or soldier. She had no training for situations like this. No weapon, no authority. Yet something, perhaps her brother's spirit, Perhaps her own newly awakened courage had propelled her here, to this moment. From her position, Sarah could see Reynolds speaking into his radio, likely calling for backup. The shelter was isolated, the nearest tactical response team at least 30 minutes away in the county seat. Whatever was happening inside, it would be resolved for better or worse before additional help could arrive. Inside the shelter, Ranger stood alert in his run, ears pricked forward at the sound of the alarm and the unfamiliar footsteps approaching the quarantine section. The dog's military training had kicked in fully now, his senses heightened, his body tense with readiness. He recognized the scents before the men appeared: the acrid smell of cigarettes and whiskey from Thompson, the subtle cologne worn by Delgado. These were threat scents, associated with pain and confinement from his months at the compound. "Should be in the back," Thompson muttered, his flashlight beam sweeping across the corridor. "Quarantine section." Delgado moved with the confidence of someone familiar with the layout. "If anyone asks, we never found him." Found. Dog escaped during the break-in. Disappeared into the night. No one will look too hard for another stray. The tranquilizer gun in Delgado's hand was designed for large animals. A single dart contained enough sedative to immobilize a full-grown German shepherd within seconds. Death would appear natural, a heart attack or stroke brought on by stress. By the time anyone conducted a thorough investigation, any evidence of the drug would have metabolized. What Delgado couldn't know was that Ranger had been trained to recognize weapons, to understand when a human's posture indicated hostile intent. As the men approached his run, the shepherd didn't bark or growl. He went silent, pressing himself against the wall beside the gate, invisible from the corridor. "This one," Delgado said, shining his light into what appeared to be an empty run. Where the hell? The momentary confusion was all Ranger needed. As Thompson leaned closer to the chain link, the dog lunged from the shadows, a blur of motion that slammed against the gate with enough force to rattle the entire row of kennels. Thompson stumbled backward with a startled curse, colliding with Delgado and sending the tranquilizer gun skittering across the concrete floor. Outside, Reynolds heard the commotion and made his decision. "We can't wait for tactical. Davis, you and I will take the east entrance. Patterson and Ramirez, cover the main doors. Remember, these suspects are likely armed and have already demonstrated disregard for the law." As the officers prepared to enter, Sarah made her own impulsive decision. While their attention was focused on the building, she slipped from the borrowed car and moved along the tree line bordering the property. Her brother Michael had taught her to shoot when she was 16, had taken her hunting on their grandparents' land. She wasn't a soldier, but she wasn't helpless either. And she knew something the officers didn't. The shelter's layout included a staff entrance at the rear, usually propped open during summer months to improve air circulation in the stifling building. If that door was unlocked, she could enter undetected, perhaps reach Ranger before anyone realized she was there. Inside, Delgado had recovered the tranquilizer gun and was approaching Ranger's run more cautiously. "Stupid mutt," he growled. "Should have put you down when I had the chance." Thompson hung back, nursing a wrist sprained in the fall. "Just dart him already. Cops could be here any minute." Ranger had retreated to the back of the run, his posture alert but no longer aggressive. To Delgado, it might have appeared that the dog was cowering. In reality, Ranger was calculating, creating distance that would give him time to react when the gate opened. "Have to get closer," Delgado muttered. "These darts don't have the range of a real gun." As he fumbled with the latch, a crash echoed from the front of the building, Reynolds and Davis making their entry. Delgado cursed, abandoning caution and yanking the gate open. "Grab him," he ordered Thompson. I'll cover the door. Thompson hesitated, eyeing the shepherd warily. That dog already bit me once. Do it, or I'll leave you for the cops. Delgado snapped, moving toward the corridor entrance with the tranquilizer gun raised. The moment Thompson stepped into the run, Ranger executed the takedown maneuver he'd been trained for, lunging not at the man's throat or face, but at his forearm, clamping down with controlled pressure and using his body weight to drag Thompson to the ground. The man howled in pain, trying desperately to free himself as Ranger maintained his grip. The commotion drew Delgado back, the tranquilizer gun now aimed at the struggling dog. Hold still, he ordered Thompson. I need a clear shot. From the corridor entrance came Reynolds's authoritative voice. Police, drop your weapon. Delgado spun toward the new threat, instinctively shifting the tranquilizer gun toward the sound. The movement was all Reynolds needed, his service weapon discharged with a deafening crack in the confined space, the bullet striking Delgado's shoulder and spinning him against the wall. The tranquilizer gun clattered to the floor as Delgado slumped down, clutching his bleeding shoulder. You shot me, he gasped, genuine shock in his voice. Over a damn dog. Federal law enforcement officer. Reynolds corrected him, keeping his weapon trained on Delgado as Davis moved to secure Thompson. That damn dog is military property and a material witness in an ongoing investigation. Through the staff-only door at the rear of the building, Sarah entered cautiously, guided by the sounds of confrontation. The sight that greeted her in the quarantine section left her momentarily frozen, Reynolds and Davis handcuffing the two intruders, Ranger still in the open run, blood from Thompson's arm staining his muzzle. Sarah! Reynolds spotted her, his expression shifting from shock to anger. I told you to stay at the town hall. This is an active crime scene. Before she could respond, Ranger's demeanor changed completely. The aggressive military posture melted away as he caught her scent, his ears perking forward, tail beginning a hesitant wag. A small whine escaped him, a sound of recognition, of longing. Sarge, Sarah whispered, using her brother's name for the dog. It's really you, isn't it? The shepherd took a tentative step toward her, then another, until he stood before her, brown eyes fixed on her face with an intensity that took her breath away. How many times had she visited Michael on base, petted this very dog, laughed as he performed tricks for treats from her hand? The puppy her brother had trained had become this powerful protector who had somehow, against all odds, found his way to the family he was meant to guard. Sarah knelt, heedless of the chaotic scene around her, and gently took the shepherd's face between her hands. Michael always said you were the smartest dog in the unit, she said softly. He'd be so proud of you for finding us, for protecting Lily. Ranger Sarge pressed his muzzle against her cheek, his entire body trembling with emotion that seemed too human for an animal, yet too pure for words. The tender moment was shattered by Delgado's bitter laugh. Touching reunion, he sneered as Davis secured his handcuffs. Enjoy it while it lasts. That mutt is still getting euthanized. He attacked 2 people now, including me. Law's the law. Davis tightened the cuffs with unnecessary force, causing Delgado to wince. Actually, the law regarding military working dogs is quite specific. Assaulting or attempting to harm one carries the same penalty as assaulting a human officer. He glanced at Sarah and Ranger. And as for his status, I think we've established that he belongs with the Anderson family, exactly where the military intended him to be. Reynolds holstered his weapon as additional officers arrived to take custody of the prisoners. "It's not that simple. James, there's still protocol. Hearings, paperwork." "There's always paperwork," Davis agreed, his customary rigidity softening as he watched Sarah and Ranger together. "But tonight, I think we can make an exception." Yet even as he spoke, all three knew the battle was far from over. The morning would bring questions, investigations, perhaps even opposition from those in town who still viewed Ranger as a dangerous animal rather than a hero. The legal path to keeping him remained uncertain, complicated by the violence of this night. As paramedics arrived to treat Delgado's wound, Sarah remained kneeling beside Ranger, her arms around his neck. Her brother's dog finally home, but still in danger of being taken away again. The shepherd seemed to sense her distress, pressing closer as if to reassure her. "We'll fight for you," she promised him quietly. "Whatever it takes. We'll keep you home, where you belong." But as the red and blue lights continued to flash across the shelter's walls, Sarah couldn't help wondering if this was a promise she could keep. Dawn broke over Cedar Springs with the peculiar clarity that follows chaos, the rising sun illuminating a town forever changed by the events of the previous night. Local news vans clustered outside the county courthouse, reporters delivering breathless updates about the midnight shootout at the animal shelter, the arrest of suspected weapons trafficker Marcus Delgado, and the extraordinary story of a military dog's journey home, inside the courthouse's smallest conference room. District Attorney Eleanor Winters frowned at the hastily assembled files before her. At 58, with 3 decades of prosecutorial experience etched into the lines around her mouth. Winters was not easily impressed by dramatic narratives. "Let me make sure I understand," she said, addressing Reynolds and Davis across the polished oak table. "You're telling me that a trained military dog was stolen from a transport facility, sold into a dogfighting ring, somehow escaped and found his way to the family of his deceased handler, and then became key to uncovering a weapons smuggling operation that may have been responsible for the handler's death." She removed her reading glasses. "If I weren't looking at the evidence myself, I'd say you were pitching me a Hallmark movie." Reynolds slid another folder across the table. "Military Affairs confirmed it this morning. The dog's microchip was found deeper in the tissue than standard placement. That's why the shelter's scanner missed it. The identification matches Sarge, K-9 partner to Sergeant First Class Michael Collins. And the Anderson connection is verified." Davis nodded. "Sarah Anderson is Collins's sister. Military records confirm Sarge was supposed to be retired to her family after Collins's death." Winters sighed, tapping her pen against the table. "And fascinating as this is, it doesn't change the fact that we have a dog with 2 bite incidents on record in less than a week. The town's dangerous dog ordinance is clear." "With respect, ma'am," Reynolds interrupted. "Both incidents involved the dog protecting either himself or a child from clear threats. The first was against an intoxicated man threatening an 8-year-old girl. The second was against armed intruders attempting to kill him. The law doesn't always recognize context. Officer Reynolds." "Perhaps it should," came a new voice from the doorway. Sarah Anderson stood there, dark circles beneath her eyes testifying to a sleepless night, but her posture straight, resolute. Beside her stood Eleanor Simmons, the semi-retired attorney from Legal Aid, her wire-rimmed glasses perched on her nose as she surveyed the room. "Ms. Winters." Simmons greeted her former colleague with a nod. I believe my client has information relevant to your deliberations. Winters gestured to the empty chairs. I wasn't aware Mrs. Anderson had retained counsel. Pro bono, Simmons clarified, settling her considerable frame into a chair. Some cases transcend billable hours. As the legal discussions proceeded across town at Cedar Springs Elementary School, Lily Anderson sat alone on a bench at the edge of the playground, ignored by her classmates as they raced and shouted through their morning recess. News traveled fast in small towns, and the other children had bombarded her with questions she couldn't answer. Was her dog really a military hero? Had her uncle been murdered? Were there guns and drugs in her house? Overwhelmed, Lily had retreated to her usual spot, opening her sketchbook to a half-finished drawing of Ranger. Mrs. Harmon had driven her to school this morning, explaining that her mother was sorting things out and would pick her up afterward. The elderly neighbor had hugged Lily tightly before leaving, whispering that everything would be all right. But Lily wasn't convinced. She'd seen too many promises broken in her young life. "Is that your dog?" Lily looked up to find Emma Ramirez, daughter of one of the officers who had responded to the shelter incident, standing before her. The fifth grader was regarded as one of the coolest girls in school, making her sudden interest both suspicious and flattering. "Yeah," Lily answered cautiously. Emma sat uninvited beside her. "My dad says your dog used to be in the army, that he saved soldiers' lives and can find bombs and stuff." Lily's grip tightened on her pencil. "His name is Ranger." "That's so cool," Emma said with genuine admiration. "My dad says he's a hero." The simple validation brought tears to Lily's eyes. For 6 months, Ranger had been her secret strength, her guardian against nightmares and loneliness. Now everyone would know how special he was if they let him live. "They might still take him away," Lily admitted, voicing her deepest fear. Emma considered this with the gravity of a child who understood unfairness. "My dad says sometimes grown-ups make dumb rules because they're scared. But your mom and the police officers are fighting for him." She pointed to Lily's drawing. "He looks brave. I bet he's not scared at all." The observation struck Lily with unexpected force. Ranger had never shown fear. Not when he was injured and starving behind their dumpster. Not when confronting the bikers. Not even when taken to the shelter. He had faced every challenge with the same steady courage. "You're right," Lily said, straightening her shoulders. "He's brave. And I need to be brave too." Back at the courthouse, the legal discussion had evolved into a strategic planning session. D.A. Winters, initially skeptical, had been swayed by the growing mountain of evidence linking Delgado to both the illegal acquisition of Sarge and a broader weapons trafficking operation that might connect to Sergeant Collins's death. "The dog is material evidence," Reynolds argued. "His identification confirms the connection between Delgado and the stolen military assets." "More than that," Sarah added, finding her voice stronger than expected. "Sarge was with my brother when they were ambushed. He might be the only witness to what actually happened that day." Winters raised an eyebrow. "Mrs. Anderson, while I sympathize with your desire for answers about your brother's death, dogs can't testify in court." "No," Simmons interjected. "But his presence at both scenes, the ambush in Afghanistan and Delgado's compound, establishes a connection that warrants investigation. Additionally, the attempt to eliminate the dog suggests consciousness of guilt on Delgado's part." As the attorneys debated legal strategies, Davis's phone buzzed with a text. Reading it, his expression changed from professional detachment to something approaching wonder. "We may have more than circumstantial evidence," he announced, turning his phone to show them. The shelter attendant who escaped during the break-in had his cell phone recording in his pocket. He was doing an audio log of feeding times when Delgado and Thompson broke in. He pressed play, and Delgado's voice filled the room. "That dog saw everything at the compound, and he was there when we arranged the ambush for Collins's unit. He's the only loose end connecting us to the whole operation." The recording continued with damning details about weapons shipments, military intelligence leaks, and the convenient accident that had killed Sergeant Collins when he got too close to uncovering the truth. A heavy silence followed the recording's conclusion. For Sarah, the confirmation of her suspicions about her brother's death landed like a physical blow. Michael hadn't died in a random attack or accident. He had been murdered for getting too close to a smuggling operation, one that Sarge had somehow tracked back to its source. "Well," Winters said finally, "I believe our priorities have just shifted dramatically. Mrs. Anderson, we'll need a formal statement from you about your brother's military service and any information he might have shared about his investigations." "Of course," Sarah agreed, still processing the revelation. "As for the dog," Winters continued, "given his evidentiary value and unique circumstances, I'm prepared to suspend the dangerous dog proceedings pending the outcome of the criminal investigation." Hope flickered in Sarah's chest. "Does that mean Ranger Sarge can come home?" Winters hesitated. "Technically, he remains military property until officially retired and transferred to civilian ownership. That said," she glanced at Reynolds and Davis, "given the extraordinary circumstances and the clear bond between the dog and your family, I see no reason why he couldn't be released to your custody while the paperwork is processed." As the meeting concluded with handshakes and promises of further cooperation, Sarah felt lightheaded with relief and exhaustion. In the hallway, Reynolds pulled her aside. "There's something else you should know," he said quietly. "When I was contacting military affairs about Sarge, they located a package in their administrative backlog, something your brother had arranged before his final mission." He handed Sarah a slip of paper. "That's the tracking number. Whatever it is, it's been sitting in a military postal facility for almost 2 years. Sarah stared at the number, another piece of her brother reaching out from beyond death. "Thank you," she whispered. As Sarah left the courthouse to pick up Lily from school, Davis lingered behind, struggling with an unfamiliar emotion, doubt about his rigid adherence to regulations. For 25 years, he had followed procedures without question, believing that rules existed for public safety. Yet this case had forced him to recognize that sometimes compassion required flexibility. That context mattered more than checklists. His reflections were interrupted by the courthouse security officer. "Sergeant Davis, there's someone here to see you. Says it's about the shepherd from last night." In the lobby stood Barbara Whitfield, the influential chairwoman of the Cedar Springs Town Council and leader of the Protect Our Kids movement that had opposed Ranger at the previous night's meeting. "Mrs. Whitfield," Davis greeted her cautiously, "what can I do for you?" "I've been following the developments," she said without preamble. "Is it true about the dog being military? About him finding his way back to his handler's family?" Davis nodded. "The evidence is conclusive." Barbara seemed to deflate slightly. I've spent 20 years advocating for strict, dangerous dog laws in this county. My grandson was attacked by a German Shepherd when he was 4, required 60 stitches and 3 surgeries. She met Davis's eyes directly. I believed I was protecting children. You were, Davis assured her. Dangerous dogs should be regulated. But this dog ranger, Sarge, whatever his name is, he wasn't dangerous. Was he? He was doing exactly what he was trained to do, protecting a child from actual threats. Davis considered his response carefully. In my professional opinion, no. He displayed remarkable restraint and discrimination in both incidents. He could have caused severe injury, but chose controlled responses instead. Barbara nodded slowly. I've called an emergency session of the town council for this afternoon. I think perhaps our ordinance needs revision to account for context and training. She straightened her shoulders. Would you be willing to testify about your observations? At Cedar Springs Elementary. The final bell rang as Sarah pulled into the parking lot. Children streamed from the building, their backpacks bouncing as they raced toward waiting parents and buses. Sarah scanned the crowd anxiously until she spotted Lily, walking alone as usual, her gaze fixed on the ground. "Lily!" Sarah called, waving from beside the car. When Lily spotted her mother, she broke into a run, launching herself into Sarah's arms with such force that Sarah stumbled backward against the car door. "Is he okay? Did they let him go? Can he come home?" The questions tumbled out in a breathless rush. Sarah smoothed her daughter's hair, choosing her words carefully. "Ranger is still at the shelter, but we can pick him up today. He's coming home with us." "Sweetheart." Lily's face transformed with joy, then clouded again. "For good. They won't take him away again. There's still some paperwork, some meetings," Sarah admitted. "But yes, I believe it's for good this time." As they drove toward the shelter, Sarah explained in simplified terms what they had learned, that Ranger was actually Sarge, Uncle Michael's military partner, that he had been meant to come live with them after Michael died, that someone had stolen him, but he had somehow found his way to them anyway. "So he's really our dog?" Lily asked, trying to process the extraordinary tale. "He was supposed to be ours all along." "Yes," Sarah confirmed, still marveling at the improbability of it all. "Your uncle made arrangements before his last mission. Somehow, Sarge knew he belonged with us." At the shelter, Reynolds and Davis were already waiting, along with a representative from Military Affairs, a crisp young lieutenant named Rodriguez who carried a leather case containing Sarge's official military records and retirement papers. "Mrs. Anderson, Miss Anderson," Lieutenant Rodriguez greeted them formally. "On behalf of the United States Army, I want to extend our sincere apologies for the administrative error that prevented Sergeant First Class Collins' final wishes from being carried out in a timely manner." Sarah recognized the carefully worded statement as the military's way of acknowledging fault without admitting liability. "Thank you, Lieutenant. We're just grateful that Sarge found his way to us, despite everything." Rodriguez nodded. "Military working dogs and their handlers develop extraordinary bonds. When the handler dies, it's not uncommon for the dog to experience profound grief. Sergeant Collins and Sarge had one of the strongest partnerships on record." "Is that why he recognized us?" Lily asked. "Because of Uncle Michael." Rodriguez knelt to Lily's level. "Military dogs are incredibly intelligent and have exceptional memories for scents and faces. Sergeant Collins likely had photos of you, personal items with your scent. Sarge would have associated those with family, with safety. The explanation was rational, scientific. Yet it failed to capture the inexplicable nature of Sarge's journey, how a dog stolen and transported hundreds of miles had managed to escape, survive, and eventually find the exact family he was meant to protect. Some things, Sarah reflected, transcended rational explanation. "If you'll sign these retirement papers," Rodriguez continued, "we can proceed with the formal transfer of ownership." As Sarah signed the documents that would officially retire Sarge from military service and transfer him to their family, Davis quietly opened the door to the quarantine section. The German shepherd that emerged was transformed from the frightened, injured stray they had found behind their dumpster 6 months ago. He walked with the dignified bearing of a soldier, alert and proud, his coat now healthy and glossy. When he spotted Sarah and Lily, however, military discipline gave way to unrestrained joy. Sarge bounded toward them, his entire body wiggling with happiness, whining softly as he pressed against them both. "Ranger!" Lily cried, throwing her arms around his neck. "We're taking you home." "Actually," Sarah said gently, "we should probably call him by his real name now. This is Sarge." Lily pulled back slightly, studying the shepherd's face. "Do you want to be Sarge again?" she asked him seriously. The dog looked between them, his intelligent eyes seeming to understand the question. Then he licked Lily's cheek and pressed his head beneath her hand, a gesture of trust and affection that transcended names. "I think," Reynolds observed with a smile, "he's happy to be whatever you call him, as long as he's with you." As they prepared to leave, Lieutenant Rodriguez presented them with one final item, Sarge's official military identification tags, polished and mounted on a blue velvet cushion alongside a Purple Heart medal. "Sergeant Collins would have wanted him to have these," Rodriguez explained. "Sarge was injured in the same ambush, trying to protect his handler until the evacuation team arrived." Sarah accepted the shadow box with trembling hands. Another piece of her brother's legacy returned to them through his loyal partner. Whatever name they called him, Ranger or Sarge, the shepherd had finally completed his mission, finding his way home to the family he was meant to protect. As they walked together toward the shelter exit, Sarge positioned himself protectively between Lily and the door, a subtle reminder that while he might now be retired, his commitment to guarding his family remained unwavering. The shepherd who had traveled so far, overcome so much, had finally found where he belonged. 3 months later, Cedar Springs Park bloomed with the vibrant colors of early autumn, oak and maple trees displaying their fiery transformation against a clear Texas sky. The park's central pavilion, usually reserved for community picnics and family reunions, had been transformed for a more solemn but ultimately celebratory occasion. Red, white, and blue bunting draped the wooden rafters, and a simple podium stood at the center, flanked by the American flag and the Army service banner. Sarah Anderson smoothed the front of her navy dress, a garment reserved for special occasions, as she watched Lily adjusting Sarge's new collar, blue leather with polished tags that glinted in the October sunlight. The shepherd sat with perfect military posture beside the 8-year-old, his alert eyes constantly scanning the growing crowd, old habits of vigilance undiminished by civilian life. "You look very handsome," Lily assured him, scratching behind his ears in the spot that made his left hind leg twitch involuntarily. Everyone's going to see what a hero you are. Sarge responded by leaning his substantial weight against her, a gesture of affection that nearly toppled the child. 3 months of proper nutrition and veterinary care had restored his physique to peak condition, his coat now gleaming with health, the old scars hidden beneath thick fur. Mayor Peterson approached, extending his hand to Sarah. "Mrs. Anderson, everything is ready whenever you are. Quite a turnout today." Indeed, it seemed half the town had gathered for the ceremony. The story of Sarge's journey from war zone to captivity to miraculous reunion had captured hearts far beyond Cedar Springs. Local news coverage had expanded to national interest, culminating in today's official recognition ceremony. "Thank you, Mayor," Sarah replied, still marveling at the community's transformation. The town that had once been divided over Ranger's fate now united in celebration of Sarge's heroism and loyalty. Even Barbara Whitfield, once the most vocal opponent of dangerous dogs, had spearheaded the revisions to the town's animal ordinances, creating special provisions for service and working animals. The changes extended beyond legislation. Sarah had reduced her nursing hours to standard shifts, prioritizing time with Lily and their new family member. The hospital, impressed by the positive publicity surrounding her story, had not only accommodated her schedule change, but promoted her to charge nurse with a modest but welcome salary increase. As Sarah scanned the gathering crowd, she spotted Officer Reynolds in his dress uniform, speaking with Lieutenant Rodriguez and several other military personnel who had traveled from bases across Texas to honor one of their own. Davis stood nearby in a pressed suit rather than his animal control uniform, looking uncharacteristically approachable as he chatted with the shelter volunteers who had helped care for Sarge during his brief impoundment. The investigation into Delgado's operation had expanded dramatically over the past months, uncovering a network of weapons trafficking that extended from Texas to international buyers. Thompson had quickly accepted a plea deal, providing evidence against his cousin in exchange for reduced charges. Delgado, facing multiple federal indictments, remained in custody awaiting trial. Most significantly for the Anderson family, military investigators had reopened the inquiry into Sergeant Collins's death, now classified as a targeted assassination rather than combat casualty. "Mom," Lily tugged at Sarah's sleeve, "the package Uncle Michael sent you never told me what was in it." Sarah touched the silver locket at her throat, a habit she'd developed in recent weeks. "I was waiting for today," she explained. "I thought we could share it as part of the ceremony." The military postal package that Reynolds had traced had finally arrived 2 weeks after Sarge's homecoming. Inside, carefully wrapped in waterproof material, they had found Michael's last letter, written the night before his final mission, along with his personal effects photos, dog tags, and a flash drive containing video messages for his sister and niece. "It's time," Mayor Peterson announced, gesturing toward the podium where the crowd had now assembled in neat rows of folding chairs. Sarah nodded, taking Lily's hand as Sarge fell into perfect heel position beside them. Together, they walked to the front of the gathering, the shepherd's disciplined stride matching their pace exactly. The ceremony began with the Pledge of Allegiance, followed by Mayor Peterson's welcome address, highlighting the extraordinary events that had brought them together. Lieutenant Rodriguez spoke next, detailing Sarge's distinguished military record, 3 tours of duty, 17 successful explosive detections that had saved countless lives, and the Purple Heart earned during the ambush that took his handler's life. When it was Reynolds' turn to speak, he focused on the inexplicable journey that had brought Sarge to Cedar Springs. Some might call it coincidence that this dog found his way to the very family he was meant to protect. Others might call it a miracle. As a canine handler myself, I call it loyalty, the unbreakable bond between a dog who made a promise and the family of the man he served alongside. Davis, still uncomfortable with public speaking despite his recent visibility in the community, kept his remarks brief but heartfelt. Rules exist for good reasons, but this case taught me that compassion must guide their application. The new Cedar Springs Animal Ordinance, informally known as the Sarge Rule, now ensures that working dogs and service animals receive the recognition and consideration they deserve. Finally, it was Sarah's turn. Standing at the podium with Lily and Sarge beside her, she unfolded the letter she had carried close to her heart for weeks. Her brother's final words to his family. "My dear Sarah and Lily," she read, her voice steady despite the emotion tightening her throat. "If you're reading this, things didn't go as planned. I'm sorry for that. I wanted to watch Lily grow up, to be the uncle who taught her to fish and helped her with math homework. Life had other ideas." Sarah paused, gathering strength before continuing. "But I'm not leaving you entirely alone. By the time you receive this, Sarge should already be with you. He's more than just a dog. He's been my partner, my protector, my best friend through the darkest days. He knows when you're sad before you do, and he'll never let you face it alone." Lily pressed closer to her mother as tears tracked silently down her cheeks. Sarge, sensing her distress, leaned gently against her legs, offering silent comfort. "Sarge is getting older." Sarah continued reading. "He deserves a peaceful retirement with people who will love him, as I have. There's no family I trust more with his care than yours. He'll guard you fiercely, love you unconditionally, and maybe in some small way keep a part of me alive in your lives." Sarah looked up from the letter, addressing the gathered community directly now. "My brother knew Sarge would protect us. What none of us could have imagined was how far that protection would extend, not just guarding Lily from immediate danger, but leading investigators to the truth about Michael's death, bringing justice not just for our family but for all the others affected by Delgado's operation." As Sarah concluded her remarks, Mayor Peterson stepped forward with a polished wooden plaque. "On behalf of Cedar Springs, we are proud to recognize Sarge as an honorary K-9 officer of our police department and to present this key to the city, the highest honor we can bestow on a citizen who has served above and beyond the call of duty." The crowd rose in a standing ovation as Lily accepted the plaque, kneeling to show it to Sarge, who sniffed it curiously before offering what many swore was a dignified nod of approval. As the formal ceremony concluded and guests mingled at the reception, Sarah found a quiet moment with Reynolds and Davis beneath the shelter of an oak tree. "I never properly thanked you both," she said. "Without your persistence, your willingness to look beyond the surface." Reynolds waved away her gratitude. "Sarge did the hard part. We just helped with the paperwork." Davis, more contemplative than usual, watched as Lily introduced Sarge to her new friends from school, the shepherd patiently allowing himself to be petted by a circle of admiring children. "Sometimes," he observed, "we need reminding that rules are meant to serve justice, not replace it. The afternoon sunlight filtered through autumn leaves, casting dappled shadows across the park as Sarge continued his new mission, bringing healing not just to one family, but to an entire community. The shepherd who had traveled so far, overcome so much, had found not only his home but his purpose. As Sarah watched her daughter laughing with her friends, Sarge a protective presence at her side, she felt Michael's presence more strongly than she had since his death. In bringing Sarge home, her brother had given them more than just protection. He had given them a path forward, a way to transform grief into purpose, fear into courage. "You found us," she whispered to Sarge as he glanced up, alert as always to her voice. "Against all odds, you found your way home." And in his wise brown eyes, Sarah saw understanding deeper than words could express, the simple, profound truth that some bonds transcend death, distance, and even human understanding. The journey home might be long and fraught with danger, but love would always find its way. In the quiet moments of reflection, we're reminded that loyalty never truly dies. Like Sarge, finding his way back to the family he was meant to protect. The bonds we forge throughout our lives have a power that transcends understanding. For those of us who've known loss, a spouse, a child, a sibling who served, we recognize the ache in Sarah's heart and the void in little Lily's world. We've witnessed how unexpected blessings can arrive in our darkest hours, sometimes in forms we never anticipated. Sarge's journey speaks to something we understand deeply, that love finds a way home, no matter the obstacles. In a world that often feels increasingly divided and chaotic, this German shepherd's unwavering dedication reminds us of values that never fade: sacrifice, loyalty, and the healing power of unconditional love. As we navigate our own autumn years, perhaps we too can find comfort in knowing that those we've loved and lost continue to watch over us in ways both seen and unseen. And sometimes, if we're truly blessed, they send us guardians to walk beside us until we meet again. Sarge's story isn't just about a remarkable dog, it's about the unbreakable connections that define our humanity.